Hello, I'm Michael Simpson, the Early Childhood Development Lead at Theirworld. To tie in with our 20th anniversary, I'm going to explain in 20 slides why focusing on young children's needs in emergencies is so important. So Ukraine reminds us of the tragedy facing young children in war. The youngest refugees face huge risks that threaten their long-term development and well-being. Despite this, infants, toddlers and their carers are often overlooked. At the start of the conflict, 7.5 million children were put in jeopardy. That's almost as many people that live in London. Displaced families have an immediate need for basic necessities, including a safe place to live, enough food to eat, warm clothing, and access to clean water and medical care. The conflict in Ukraine follows a series of humanitarian crises across the world. In 2015, 1 in 8 babies were born in conflict zones. Whether in Afghanistan, Haiti, Palestine, Syria, Yemen, and many other places, children are being born in unbearable circumstances. They're at risk of starvation, disease, and abuse. Their education is threatened. Most refugees live in protracted situations that can last 26 years. Holistic early childhood development services that centre the needs of young children and their carers are essential if the long-term risks to children are to be avoided or mitigated. Yet we know the world is not doing enough. Recent research has found that only 3% of total development assistance goes to crisis-affected countries. We also estimate that only 2% of humanitarian funding goes directly to early years services and infants. Why is focusing on the needs of young children in crisis so important? The early years of a child's life are critical for their long-term development. Children under 5 are undergoing rapid brain changes. This means they are extremely sensitive to environmental influences. Children who are exposed to prolonged adversities like neglect, physical violence, and abuse can develop toxic stress responses that impact brain development. These can have lifelong negative implications, impacting a child's physical and mental health. It can increase the risk of illnesses, such as heart disease, later in life. In situations of conflict and crisis like in Afghanistan, Syria, and Mali, these risks become even more severe. Children can be exposed to devastating violence, including attacks on their homes and communities, and caregivers can suffer trauma of their own, making it more difficult to look after their children. We're still unraveling the larger implications of these impacts on children and wider society. Advances in fields such as epigenetics is finding that these experiences of trauma, violence, and disadvantage can be biologically passed down through different generations. This has implications for the future peace, social cohesion, and stability of societies. Thankfully, we have a good idea of how we can help children in crisis and conflict settings. There are 5 things we can do to support the youngest children. Ensure they are healthy, well-fed, are protected, receive warmth and love, and have opportunities to learn. Learning through play in child-friendly spaces, a safe home or shelter, preschool centre, or the community will help children thrive in education. We can train teachers and volunteers to provide psychosocial support for children and caregivers. It also provides opportunities for therapeutic support like mindfulness in everyday learning exercises. For the youngest children, their relationships with parents and caregivers is a critical source of resilience. Parents and caregivers can help young children through conflict and crises with simple caring acts like cuddles, games, and songs. These can protect and buffer children. Refugee families face huge challenges to provide for their children. Parents and caregivers have to cope with aspects such as loss, depression, insecurity, and trauma. This means parents and caregivers also need help of their own. This can be through cash transfers, mental health support, and ensuring families have a safe, warm shelter. These crucial interventions are often ignored in refugee responses. A 2018 analysis of refugee humanitarian response plans found that only half mentioned learning and education for children under 5, an even smaller number focused on the needs of parents and caregivers. We've seen ordinary people come together in times of crisis, like these Polish families who provided buggies for arriving Ukrainian parents at a train station. These moments show there is popular support for interventions that focus on young children and their families. This is crucial because we know that children are incredibly resilient. Recovery from the trauma of disaster and war is possible, but it means we need to invest. Early child services, including a focus on child-friendly spaces and those that support and guide parents, caregivers, and families in times of crisis, can mitigate the negative effects of trauma and stress on young children and promote resilience and well-being. It's also crucial that educational opportunities are not lost. The youngest children have the right to an education free from violence and attack. This is why Theirworld is calling on world leaders to invest at least 10% of global education budgets on pre-primary education. Supporting young children in crisis and conflict situations is not only important for keeping children and families safe, these efforts are also the building blocks of resilient and peaceful future societies. With these foundations in place, children have a better chance of managing conflict and thriving in diversity as they grow older. With these pieces in place, we can make sure every child is cared for and supported, no matter the circumstances they were born into, and we can ensure that they get the best start in life. And if you'd like to know more, you can go to our website, theirworld.org, and find out all the kinds of support and responses we're providing young children.